I was born with the wrong voice. Not just the voice that came from my throat, though that betrayed me too, deepening when I turned 13. No, I'm talking about the voice they assigned me at birth, along with a name I've since buried. In 1950s Mississippi, they called me a boy. They called me other things too. Sissy, fairy, freak. When I reached for my sister's dolls instead of Daddy's hunting rifle. When I hummed Patsy Cline instead of Elvis. When my hips moved to rhythms my body shouldn't have understood. But here's what they never knew. Beneath the scratchy sweaters and crew cuts, beneath the split lips from schoolyard lessons, beneath the sermons and shame, I was composing a different song. I'm Celeste Monroe, country music legend you've never heard of. And this is the story of how I found my true voice in the one place determined to silence it, the heartland of America itself. Before I tell you about the night I sang at the Grand Ole Opry with blood soaking through my sequined dress, let me take you back to where it all began. Summer 1959. I'm 9 years old, hiding in the magnolia tree behind our church in Tupelo. Sunday service just let out, and Mama's looking for me, calling that boy's name I won't repeat. I'm wearing my cousin's patent leather shoes, 3 sizes too big but so shiny I can see my face in them. Below me, the church pianist is locking up. Miss Darlene, tall, broad-shouldered, with hands that could span 12 keys. The only woman in town who wore pants and drove her own truck. The woman the church ladies whispered about. She pauses beneath my tree, lights a cigarette, and looks up directly at me and my forbidden shoes. "Nice kicks," she says, exhaling smoke rings. I wait for the sermon, the disgust, the threat to tell my daddy. Instead, she says, "You know what they call people like us where I come from in New Orleans?" I shake my head, mute with terror and wonder. "Lagniappe," she says, rolling the word like velvet. "A little something extra, like when a baker gives you 13 donuts instead of 12. She winks. "Most folks only get one song to sing in this life. But you and me, we get harmony parts too." She flicks her cigarette. "Don't let nobody silence your music, hear? Whatever it sounds like." Miss Darlene disappeared a month later. Some said she ran off with a jazz drummer, but her words became my heartbeat, my survival rhythm. And 20 years later, when I stood trembling in the wings of the most hallowed stage in country music, her voice was the one I heard above the crowd. Don't let nobody silence your music. I came into this world as someone else, in Tupelo, Mississippi, 1950. The same town that gave us Elvis, though our similarities ended at geography. Mama said I was different right from the start. While other boys were raising hell, I was raising eyebrows. I'd steal my sister's ribbons. I'd lip-sync to Kitty Wells instead of Johnny Cash. Daddy was a mechanic with hands perpetually stained with engine grease. A man of few words but firm beliefs. Church on Sundays. Discipline always. "Stand up straight," he'd say, yanking my shoulders back. "Walk like you mean it." I tried. Lord knows I tried. I learned to lower my voice, to crush my wrists against my sides, to move through the world taking up the space a boy should take. School was a battlefield. Kids can sniff out difference like bloodhounds, and difference in Tupelo was a crime. "Why you walk like that?" they'd ask, mimicking the sway in my hips. "Why you talk like that?" they'd mock, catching the lilt at the end of my sentences. I learned to become invisible, to fade into backgrounds. I built a fortress of silence around the girls screaming inside me. Music became my only escape. In songs, I found worlds where transformation wasn't just possible, but celebrated. Through their voices, I discovered the feminine power I craved. My first guitar came from a pawn shop when I was 12. Daddy bought it to man me up. Instead, it became the first extension of my voice. In my bedroom, door locked, I'd sing Tammy Wynette songs in a whispered falsetto. At 16, when my body betrayed me completely, shoulders broadening, voice deepening, I wrote my first song. I called it Reflection. The face that stares back isn't mine. A stranger's eyes meet my gaze. I've been playing a part all this time in a play with no final act. When Daddy found the lyrics, he ripped them to pieces and paid for football camp that summer. It didn't take. Nothing did. The summer I turned 18, my father found me in the backyard, wearing my mother's sundress and singing Stand By Your Man. "You're sick," he said, voice steady as a surgeon's hand. "But we can fix you." The treatment center was a converted motel outside Birmingham. They called it conversion therapy. I called it torture. 3 months of Bible verses, ice baths, and electric shocks. I returned home hollow-eyed and compliant. For nearly 2 years, I performed the role of prodigal son, cut my hair, dated a deacon's daughter named Mary Beth, enrolled in community college. But at night, I still wrote songs in a hidden notebook, songs in a woman's voice. In 1970, Mary Beth wanted marriage. Daddy wanted a partnership at the garage, and I wanted to die rather than live another day in that skin. So on a Tuesday in July, with $237 saved, I left a note. "Gone to find my voice. Don't look for me." New York in 1970 hit me like a thunderclap. After the muffled quiet of Mississippi, the city's volume was almost physical, a wall of sound and color and life. I arrived at Port Authority with my guitar, a duffel bag, and a name that didn't fit. Within a week, I'd found a mattress in a shared apartment and a job washing dishes at a diner. The city was a revelation. Men with flowing hair and jewelry, women in pantsuits, and in between, people who seemed to float between worlds. I remember wandering into a club called the Stonewall Inn without knowing its significance. Inside those walls, I could breathe for the first time. There were people like me there. I met a queen named Destiny who took one look at my hunched shoulders and declared, "Honey, you're not fooling anyone, least of all yourself." She introduced me to a world I'd only glimpsed in dreams. Underground clubs where men became glamorous women, warehouse parties where gender was fluid, and most importantly, Dr. Sylvia Rivera's clinic where people like me could get hormones. "What's your real name, sugar?" Destiny asked one night as she showed me how to apply eyeliner. I hesitated. I'd never said it out loud before. "Celeste," I finally whispered. "Celeste Monroe." "Well, Miss Celeste Monroe," she said, "pleasure to finally meet you." That night I looked in the mirror and saw myself, truly myself, for the first time. The hormones changed me slowly, then all at once. My skin softened, my features rounded, my body redistributed into curves I'd always felt should be there. But even as my body began to match my soul, I felt a different dysphoria. New York had its own soundtrack, disco, punk, experimental jazz, but none of it was the music in my bones. I'd grown up on Loretta Lynn and Patsy Cline, on pedal steel and fiddle breaks. At night, I'd sit on the fire escape and play country songs in my new voice. A music journalist named David stopped to listen. "You've got something special," he said, "but you're in the wrong city for that sound." "I can't go back south," I told him, panic rising. "Not like this." "Nashville isn't Mississippi," he said. "It's still the South, but it's also a music town." He was romanticizing, of course. Nashville in 1973 wasn't welcoming to transgender women, but he planted a seed. What if I could reclaim not just my gender, but the music of my homeland? We recorded a demo, 3 original songs and a cover of Walkin' After Midnight. We sent it to every contact David had in Nashville. Weeks passed, then months. I'd almost given up when a letter arrived from Sagebrush Records. "Interested in your sound. Can you come to Nashville for an in-person audition? Tom Watkins, A&R." I stared at the letter for hours. My chance to bring Celeste home. But Nashville was the buckle of the Bible Belt. Everything I'd fled. Destiny found me on the fire escape, clutching the letter and crying. "I can't do it," I told her. "They're expecting Charles." When Celeste shows up, she took my face in her hands. Listen to me, Celeste Monroe. You've already survived the hardest part. You became yourself. Everything else is just an audience. 2 weeks later, I boarded a Greyhound bound for Nashville, my heart hammering with equal parts terror and hope. Nashville in the early 70s was a city in transition. The countercultural revolution had touched even this conservative stronghold. But beneath the veneer of change, old values ran deep. Tom Watkins was not what I expected. In his 50s, with a ponytail, turquoise rings, and a voice sandpapered by whiskey, he'd produced some of the outlaws, Waylon, Willie, Chris. His eyes widened when I walked in, all 5'9" of me in a modest dress and carefully applied makeup. "You're Charles Monroe?" he asked, cigarette dangling from his lips. "I'm Celeste Monroe," I said, my practiced voice steady. "The voice on the demo you liked." Another moment. Then he shrugged. "All right then, Celeste. Let's hear what you've got." I played 3 songs. When I finished, the room was silent except for the ceiling fan. "You understand what you're asking for?" he finally said. "This is Nashville, not New York. You're selling an image, a story." "I know," I said. "And your story is complicated." I held his gaze. "The best country songs always are." He barked a laugh, genuine, surprised. Fair enough. The next few months were a crash course in reality. I recorded a 5-song EP with session musicians who whispered behind my back. I played small writers' nights where audiences were sometimes kind, sometimes cruel. The EP, released under C. Monroe to maintain ambiguity, gained modest traction. A reviewer called it hauntingly authentic, country music from an outsider's inside perspective. But the breakthrough remained elusive. Bigger venues wouldn't book me. Major labels wouldn't meet. Country radio wouldn't touch my music. The lowest point came in spring of 1975. I'd booked a gig at the Bluebird Cafe, a Tuesday afternoon slot, but still the Bluebird. I was midway through my set when drunk men entered. One shouted, "That ain't no woman singing! That's a goddamn man in a dress!" The room froze. They advanced on the stage. One grabbed for my guitar. I stood up, grabbed the microphone stand with both hands, and swung it like a baseball bat, connected with the first man's shoulder. "I'm more woman than you can handle," I said, "and more of a man than you'll ever be." I was banned from the Bluebird for 6 months. The story circulated through Music Row, embellished but impossible to ignore. That night I packed my bags, ready to retreat to New York. Then I received an invitation from Bobby Winters, a country music legend, to meet at Tootsie's Orchid Lounge. "Miss Monroe," he said when I arrived, "I heard your songs and your Bluebird story." He leaned forward. Reminded me of Patsy Cline. She didn't take shit from anyone either. He told me stories about country music's secret history, about queer artists hiding in plain sight. "This music comes from the margins," he said. "We've just forgotten that." "I want to produce your album," he announced, "and I want you to open for me at the Opry." I stared at him. Why? Because talent deserves a platform, and because it's about damn time country music remembered what it's supposed to be about. Truth. The night of the Opry performance, I stood in the wings, paralyzed with fear. "Remember," Bobby said, "Minnie Pearl built her career being laughed at. The question is whether your message is worth the cost." And now, making her Opry debut, please welcome Miss Celeste Monroe. I took my place at the microphone. The murmurs were audible. Some people got up to leave. Then, from somewhere in the balcony, a woman's voice called out, "Sing your song, honey." I nodded to the band and launched into Mississippi Queen, my anthem of Southern womanhood reclaimed. I'm the Mississippi Queen. Not what I seem, but exactly who I am. I'm the Mississippi Queen, got a different dream, but my heart's pure Dixieland. By the final number, I had them. Not all, but enough. Full circle, 1980 to 2000. The 1980s brought new challenges. Reagan's America meant a conservative backlash. Nashville grew more traditional in response. Then the letter arrived from Tupelo. My mother was dying. I returned to the house I'd fled a decade earlier. My mother, frail with cancer, stared at me in the doorway. "You look like my sister," she finally said. "Aunt Ruby," around the eyes. It wasn't acceptance, but it wasn't rejection either. We talked for hours. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. A bridge being built word by careful word over a chasm of pain. I never saw my father during that visit. He still refused to acknowledge my existence. My mother died 3 weeks later. I wasn't invited to the funeral. The grief became the soil for my next album, Homecoming, about belonging nowhere, about being erased from your own history. To everyone's surprise, it found an audience. Critics praised its emotional authenticity. I was invited to festivals, interviewed, featured on television. By the 1990s, I found myself in a strange new position. Respected if not embraced, visible if not fully seen. I received a surprising invitation to perform at the CMA Awards in a segment honoring influential voices outside the mainstream. On national television, I sang My Mother's Daughter, a ballad about reconciliation across death. I am my mother's daughter, though she never had one. Till now I am my mother's daughter, carrying her truth somehow. The performance generated controversy, boycotts, and death threats, but also newfound visibility and unexpected support. In 1998, I published my autobiography, Both Sides Now, receiving surprisingly positive reviews. As the millennium approached, I found myself not a mainstream star, but a respected elder with a legacy. I had survived in an industry that had tried repeatedly to exclude me. That survival itself was a kind of triumph. In 2015, I received news I never expected. My father was dying, and asking for me by my chosen name. When I arrived at the Baptist Hospital in Tupelo, he was diminished, shrunken in the hospital bed, partially paralyzed from a stroke. "Celeste," he said, my name awkward in his mouth. "Daddy," I replied. "I've been watching," he admitted, "all these years, keeping track." He'd collected articles, reviews, mentions of my name in music magazines. "I didn't understand," he said. "Still don't really." "I know, Daddy." "But you seem happy," I supplied. "I am. I've had a good life." As I was leaving, he caught my hand. "I wish your mother had lived to see you now." It wasn't forgiveness. The hurt ran too deep for that. But it was peace. A recognition, however belated, of my humanity. Don't let nobody silence your music. I never did.
If Celeste's journey touched your heart today, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Subscribe to our channel for more untold stories of women who refused to be silenced. Share this video with someone who's struggling to find their authentic voice. Sometimes knowing you're not alone in your journey can make all the difference. Leave a comment telling us what part of Celeste's story resonated most with you. Was it her struggle for acceptance, her musical journey, or that powerful moment at the Bluebird Cafe? Every story has a harmony part waiting to be heard. What's yours? For those who connect deeply with Celeste's journey, check out our community resources in the description below. We've linked organizations supporting transgender, musicians, and artists in conservative spaces. Remember Miss Darlene's words. Most folks only get one song to sing in this life. But some of us, we get harmony parts too. Thank you for bearing witness to Celeste's song. In a world that tries to silence authentic voices, listening becomes an act of revolution.